they got to figure out, like, what is Brock Purdy? Who is Brock Purdy? Because we're at that pay time. So, Jory, like, you look at all of this together and try to figure out where the 49ers are on their quarterback. Do you think that we're still in that long-term deal area that we thought we might be in a few months ago?
Yeah, it's a great question. It reminds me of conversations I had at the league meetings this week regarding the Cowboys and Dak Prescott. And I think, again, there are different points and you can make what you want of the $60 million that Dak's making. But I think when it comes down to it, whether it's Dak, whether it's head coach Mike McCarthy with the Cowboys, the way that a lot of people in that building are looking at it is so few players, especially if your name is not Patrick Mahomes, are going to be able to perform at the highest level if they don't have their star player. Now, what if you don't have Christian McCaffrey or Jordan Mason or Brandon Ayuk? Oh, I think Trent Williams has not played a lot of these games. I mean, it was just one thing after the next. And so you could say that, well, if a quarterback's making $55, 60, $65 million a year, that they should be able to elevate everyone around them. But there's a difference between elevating everyone around them and being able to completely cover and play essentially like 8 of the 11 positions on the field. I just don't think that's realistic. So I think that it will be maybe like not the same taste in their mouth when they give Brock Purdy that deal, but I don't think that anyone should really be questioning whether Brock Purdy deserves that deal. What do you guys think?
I've always said the same thing over and over. Do you think the 49ers can win a Super Bowl with Brock Purdy making $60 million a year, 55 or 65 or whatever it is in that range? If your answer is no, you got to do something else. I cannot stand the lack of logic behind, well, of course you can't. Most quarterbacks, you can't win a championship with them making $60 million, but you got to pay them anyway. What are we doing? Like, the whole goal of this is winning a championship. I've always said I don't believe the 49ers can win a Super Bowl with Brock Purdy making in the $60 million range, and I'll stick to that. So if that's your answer, my counterpoint is Kyle Shanahan's the cheat code. I think he's the best offensive coach in football. The people who want to get him fired right now, like, come on. Like, I see that every once in a while on social media. I'm like, this is one of the dumbest takes I've ever seen. Kyle Shanahan is a coach who elevates everyone, including the quarterback. Did it with Jimmy G, did it with Brock Purdy, could do it with another guy he drafted. So that's always been my answer. But if your answer is, yes, the 49ers could win a Super Bowl with Brock Purdy making $60 million a year, okay, cool. Go ahead and sign him. But if your answer to that is no, then you got to try something different. You got to be more creative. We can't just keep pounding our heads against the wall saying, well, this is what everybody else does. Guess we need to do it too.
Okay, but Frank, to me, the question would be not, are they going to win a Super Bowl, but are they more likely and ideally substantially more likely to win one with Brock Purdy than the alternative? To me, the two most likely alternatives are they draft a guy or they get like an Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins types for a year. We know Shanahan's kind of like things about Kirk Cousins. He thinks he could probably save Rodgers. Rodgers could go home to the Bay Area where he's from, all of that. I don't think that the Rodgers thing is going to work. I mean, again, we saw this with the Jets. The Jets had a lot of talents on that offense, and it did not look good for most of this year. And then drafting, so you want to trade up to get Trey Lance rather than pay $60 million a year? I would rather Brock Purdy than trade up for Trey Lance again, which is what we've seen with Kyle Shanahan. Like, we cannot trust Kyle Shanahan to draft a quarterback.
Always the example? Trey Lance was not a good fit. He is a improvisational quarterback.
Kyle Shanahan traded up to draft.
I don't think you want it. I don't think Kyle wanted him.
That is the quarterback that Kyle Shanahan wanted.
I don't think Kyle wanted him to be
honest with you. He lucked into Brock Purdy.
But yes, he did. Absolutely.
Even if Kyle didn't want him,
Why is Trey Lance the example? Why is Trey Lance the example? Why isn't he Jimmy G?
Because
Kyle
nothing's changed.
Him.
Because nothing's changed in the organization. It's the same GM and the same head coach. So, and Jory, you would know more about whether or not Kyle wanted him. But even if Kyle didn't want him, the same GM's going to be like, what has changed about the drafting situation this year that would make it suddenly different for the 49ers? I don't know if Kyle wanted him, but I know that the 49ers decided as a group, the same group that's in the building right now, decided to draft Trey Lance. And it's one of the larger fails in recent NFL draft. Like, when you trade up, you trade a king's ransom and you take a quarterback that high and you lose out. The great thing is that they got lucky, and so that's okay. But you want to rely on getting lucky again? I don't.
But I think, again, it comes back to, and you got, again, answer the question, Claire. Again, I'll use Jory's words. Are you more likely to win a Super Bowl with Brock Purdy making $60 million or trying what's behind door 2? And if your answer is yes, I'm cool with that. But if your answer is no, I don't think so. Okay, then I'm fine with that. But if your answer is no, then you got to try something else.
But here's the thing, Frank. It's not that I have talked to Kyle. It's not that I have talked to Kyle Shanahan about this decision one-on-one or anything like that. But you have to understand how the 49ers work if you talk to people in the 49ers or around the league. Kyle runs that team. This is not a knock on John Lynch. This is just way that Kyle operates and the degree of influence he has, because he has earned that, he has had that kind of success. I mean, again, we're going to get into the Bill Belichick talks on what he wants and what control looks like for head coaches in the league. I'm trying to think if there is any coach, if so, maybe under 5, who have more influence on their roster management than Kyle Shanahan, particularly on the offensive side of the ball and particularly at quarterback. This is a guy who he runs a scheme. I know we got a lot of knocks that Brock Purdy's a system quarterback, but as I wrote about during the Super Bowl week this past year, this is actually more that Brock Purdy is the quarterback that works extremely well for Kyle Shanahan's system, which is a hugely beneficial thing to be this year. And so you cannot tell me that they drafted a quarterback for Kyle Shanahan's system without Kyle Shanahan wanting him.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. But why do we go with, well, they screwed up with Trey Lance, so they can never try that again? Why isn't it, well, they hit Brock Purdy, they could do that again? Why? Why do we just revert to,
because
well,
they
Trey Lance didn't work out, so we can't try it again?
Hitting Brock Purdy was luck. If they thought,
but why is it not hitting Trey Lance bad luck?
It's the same reason.
I'll tell you why it's luck. I feel like this must be combative Friday. I didn't realize we were going into this.
Yes, it's Friday.
I know. I didn't realize that. I wasn't expecting this. I know that that's what you guys do, a C-Rob, but I thought that was a C-Rob thing, not a Friday thing. But I'll tell you what. I talked to Rams general manager Les Snead this past summer about Puka Nacua and about what did you see in Puka Nacua and what were you able to figure out that the league wasn't able to. And what the Rams and everyone else will tell you is that if they really thought Puka was going to be what Puka was his rookie year, setting all of these records, they weren't drafting him in the 5th round. They would have drafted him in the 2nd round. So too, if the 49ers really believed in Brock Purdy, they were not drafting him with the final pick. They literally drafted him then because they're like, oh, someone else is going to pay him more as a priority free agent if he goes undrafted. And so, yes, there's a big case that one of the things that Brock Purdy had, we're seeing play out across the league with the first rounders this year, which is that the more college experience you have, the better. And so Brock Purdy came in with a ton of experience at the college level, the same way Jaden Daniels has, the same way Bo Nix has. But they would not have let him go until that final pick when 200-something picks could have drafted him before they did if they believed in him. That was luck.
I agree with that, but it was luck, but they still identified him. They still got him. They could do it again.
But still, let me ask you this. You and I, we like to dabble. So let's say we're in Vegas. And I walk up to the roulette table and I take every dollar that I have ever made in my life and I put it all on black. All right? And it doesn't hit. And 2 years later, I come back and I put every dollar that I've ever made in my life on black again. And this time it hits. All right? A couple years after that, you and I go back to the roulette table and I got a big old wad of cash. What are you telling me to do? Are you telling me, are we looking at the fact that I got unlucky the first time or that I got lucky the second time? As a friend, you would look at me and you say, you have lost your damn mind. Put your money away. Don't put it on. That's what I think happens in the quarterback roulette. It's quarterback roulette.
In this example, black is Trey Lance and you lost the first time on Trey Lance and you're saying, well, you could never try black again. That's obviously never going to hit. Yes, they screwed up the Trey Lance pick. I get that. He wasn't a great fit for Kyle Shanahan's offense. I don't think that means that you can't go find another quarterback. I think that the Brock Purdy example, yes, they got lucky. For sure they got lucky with Brock Purdy. But they also identified Brock Purdy. They also developed Brock Purdy. Kyle Shanahan got the absolute most out of Brock Purdy. I think Kyle's the cheat code here. And that's why I've said over and over, look, we all agree, all of us. I think people who aren't on this podcast, people who are listening, the three of us, the biggest edge right now you can have in the entire sporting landscape is a good quarterback on his rookie deal. Why doesn't any team leverage this? Why doesn't any team say, wait a second, we all agree that's the biggest edge you can have in sports. We're going to keep trying to do that. We're just going to keep flipping. We're going to keep, you know what, Brock Purdy, you've had a great run, but now we're going to trade you. We're going to trade you for a couple first round picks, whatever they can get, whatever it would be in a trade. And we're just going to keep this cycle going because we understand where nobody else does and nobody has the guts to do it. We understand this is the biggest edge in sports. Nobody else is doing this. This is the Moneyball thing almost, right? We're doing something nobody else is because nobody else has the guts to leverage the biggest advantage in the sporting landscape at this moment.
I question that there are 32 capable people in the world right now that could be actual bona fide starting quarterbacks. And every time
they're definitely not 32 better than Brock Purdy, maybe 12.
But you know what? There's not 32 coaches better than Kyle Shanahan at developing. I wouldn't I wouldn't recommend this for every team. I would
But you know
recommend
what
this
I
for the
would say to that,
Jets.
Frank?
Like,
I think
no,
you make
God.
a good point in theory, but I think it struggles to hold up in practice because I was thinking about this week because I went to the Minnesota Vikings during OTAs right after they hired head coach Kevin O'Connell and general manager Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. I sat down with both of them, and one of the things that Kwesi told me is that when he was looking for a quarterback, yes, you want to get the Tom Brady, yes, you want to get the Patrick Mahomes, but given how hard it is to find those guys who have been proven to win Super Bowls, what he thought is that having a coach like Kevin O'Connell would allow him to get that extra bump of, hey, he believed Kevin would be able to elevate that quarterback. He believed that certain things they did in the scheme would be able to get them a few more yards on first and second down to set them up for third down. Certain things would be able to get him a couple more checks that would keep him from getting that sack. And I think we've seen that play out, whether it's with the various quarterbacks that the Vikings went through last year after Kirk Cousins went down. Kirk Cousins himself playing better in Minnesota than anywhere else he's played. And now we're seeing that with Sam Darnold. The problem is that when you go to San Francisco, yes, Kyle Shanahan in theory should do that, but what is the sample size? Like, who is the evidence that he's done that with? Jimmy G, yes, he probably elevated to some degree, but even that, he kind of like didn't want to work with him anymore.
What are you talking about? Jimmy G almost won a Super Bowl. Like,
yes.
If they covered Jet Chip Watts, they win a Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yes, but I think what you have to remember is, okay, and Jared Goff almost won a Super Bowl with Sean McVay, and Sean McVay's like, I'm done with this guy. I need Matthew Stafford. And so when you have coaches like Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan, it's one, can they elevate them? And two, are they willing to elevate them? And Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay are not willing to elevate all of them. I mean, our colleague Charles Robinson has written about this at length, is that Kyle is so particular and so specific that it's not just about the scheme. It's like when he's out on you, he is out on you and he gives up on you and he is not willing to coach you anymore. And so the fact that he is not out on Brock Purdy at this point, from everything we know, that is actually really valuable because you need the coach's buy-in. It sounds stupid. It sounds like grow up, be an adult, and just like work with anyone. But these coaches are not willing to do that.
I will only, I know we got to wrap this Brock Purdy conversation, move on. I would just remind everybody, we're all sitting here saying, Brock's got to go get paid, right? Like, we all know that. The reality of it is they have another year.
I liked it.
Paid. The reality of it is he's got another year left on his deal at a fraction. And if they really wanted to, they could basically play chicken. Force Brock to figure out what he wants to do. They could wait a whole nother year and then they could franchise.
Oh, he'd hold out. He's got to hold out.
You think?
I mean, if I'm Brock Purdy's agent, I'm like, bro, you're not playing for $790,000 again this year. If we're just not. Like, sorry. Like,
everybody holds out in San Francisco, and it always works.
Yeah,
I was going to say, that's the
works.
biggest thing the Niners have going against them. When you talk to people around the league about one of the reasons that the Eagles are able to get the degree of talent retained that they are, I mean, keeping A.J. Brown, keeping Devonta Smith, keeping Jalen Hurts, getting Saquon Barkley, it's because Howie gets ahead of deals. He structures them in certain ways, but he also does them earlier. If you're in San Francisco, and I've seen this with Dallas through the years too, you know they're going to cave toward the end. They get those deals done at the end. Brandon Ayuk can be so mad and be going to the Steelers and the Cleveland Browns, and he's coming back. And so the question is, what is Brock Purdy willing to do? Because from a purely financial standpoint, I believe that the Niners would cave during training camp. I just don't know if from a quarterback standpoint you want to do that.